Research question. Hello, Emma Eastwood here. My research is on crime prevention reforms and policies, more specifically a sociological analysis of the legislations between 1994 and 2014. I am now in the 9th week of the first semester in the honours program, and my project has narrowed down quite substantially to a more feasible size. I am now focusing on sociologically analysing the National Australia's Firearm Act 1996. Methods employed plus ethical considerations. The methods I have been focusing on thus far have been interviewing and surveying. I have read the book Social Research by Tim May, and it brought interesting arguments on the first two. The first being interviewing. May highlights the difference between semi-structured and unstructured interviews and compared them to focus groups. Focus groups for me have been fascinating to watch. They come up in documentaries quite a bit. You watch how complete strangers form alliances and become protective of each other quite quickly once they figure out they share similar experiences. I came to the conclusion focus groups would be hard for me to construct, as law enforcement figures do not run on the same schedule, unfortunately for me. The decision to embark on either semi-structured or unstructured interviews came from my own experiences in a course I took last year called Research in Sociology, which required students to undertake interviews in relation to their chosen topics. The semi-structured interviews did not go well, despite asking open-ended questions and trying my very best to make the participants feel comfortable. They still gave me short, abrupt responses. It was not a pleasant experience. I am still a little scarred from it. I decided to change my tactic then to unstructured interviews, and although it went much better, we only covered 2 questions in the space of 20 minutes. I do argue that it worked better as the responses to those 2 questions were rich in data. Therefore, I will be using unstructured interviews towards law enforcement officers to gain their responses on the effectiveness Australia's firearm legislation has been since 1996. It was a tough decision to agree on interviews, as both sides of the arguments were strong. The for argument is that it shows evidence of research skills, whereas the against argument is that it limits the exploration of existing data, and one may fall into the trap of repeating existing data. This brings me to the ethical considerations of my research. Fortunately, my project is not covering a sensitive topic, and the interviews conducted will be with adults about the legislation. If I were concentrating on the deaths at Port Arthur massacre, then it would be a different story. Possible structure plus political aspects. I would now like to share some of the analysis that I have categorized and should form the structure of my dissertation. The 4 questions I plan to answer are: is the legislation effective? What were the motivations of the government? How is the policy administered? And is the legislation regularly updated? The effectiveness of the legislation comes down to the 28-day cooling off period from acquiring a gun license, as it shows a decline in male firearm suicides. Additionally, there were 10 mass shootings before Port Arthur. Since the introduction of firearm legislations, there have been none. The motivations of the government in regards to implementing this legislation is gun violence and the crippling injuries and death it causes, not crime itself. Ammunition control could be a key motivation for international governments without existing firearm control, such as America. This means passing a 1 bullet a month law and banning the larger caliber bullets. The policy of the 1996 firearm legislation was administered quite seamlessly. The police were strongly in favour and were very helpful. This could be due to the police seeing their colleagues losing their lives over shootings. The Howard government had the balance right in regards to not over-arming police, but making sure they are protected. The legislation has not been regularly updated, evident in the current winding back of these laws. It is crucial to regularly update the evidence base as new data becomes available, to consolidate statistical information and more fully clarify the nature of any change in firearm-related deaths over time. Therefore, there should be measures in place to regularly revise policies as technological changes change the demands of policy. Howard argues that it will not do any harm to revisit the legislation and to keep a better eye on the illegal importation of firearms. My project largely involves political aspects. I aim for a textual analysis, which is the social and political aspect of the 1996 Australian Firearm Act. This should determine the motivations and effectiveness of this legislation and whether a call for action is necessary in the near future. Research value. The value of my research lies in the literature, as it has highlighted an urgency in Australia for the legislation to be reviewed, as the winding back of laws is concerning. There are 250,000 illegal guns in Australia and a further 10,000 pistols. The problem is more than 15,000 legal firearms are being stolen and to be sold on the black market, which are then used in crimes. In a Victorian 2012 report, it highlighted that there were 2.75 million legal firearms. Every 2 days, a person is stopped regarding illegal possession of firearms. Every 6 days, a gun has been used in a crime, and there were 688 offences involving guns. That concludes my vlog on Australia's Firearm Legislation 1996. I have covered my research question, methods employed plus ethical considerations, possible structure plus political aspects, and my research's value. Thank you and good day.